we had dealt with throughout the season. It helped us for these moments right here, and we're prepared for them.
Survive in advance. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special edition of Leading the Charge. I am Matt Bove, joined by Howard Simon and Joe Biscaglia. Listen, it's only a half an hour this week. We've got a lot to talk about as we kind of cram everything in after the Bills' huge 31-17 win yesterday against the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll spend a little bit of time talking about the game against Pittsburgh, but we know we need to quickly turn the page because it's the big, bad Kansas City Chiefs coming to town. It's Josh Allen against Patrick Mahomes, round 3 in the playoffs. There is so much to go over. Howard, I'm going to start with you. Initial takeaways from yesterday's game and where the Bills stands now 2 games away from the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it went as expected. I know some people might have been sweating it out when it was a one-score game in the second half. I was never worried. Look, I can be worried and nervous with the best of them. Maybe not you, Matt, but I was never really worried. It felt over at 14-0, for sure at 21-0. And even though Pittsburgh made it a one-score game, did anybody think the Bills' offense would not score any more points to put the game away? Josh made some big plays, his run, the Shakir catch, and the offense had to do that because of what was going on the defensive side of the ball with all the injuries. But I think the game went as I expected. The Bills were the better team. They proved it over the course of 60 minutes.
Joe, what is it about Josh Allen that in the playoffs he just becomes an absolute sicko? He was incredible yesterday.
He was, and I think this is the big delineation between the potential of what the Bills could be in this postseason versus maybe what he was at spots, even in their win streak down the stretch of the regular season. I mean, when you saw him go through some struggles, like I don't know, it was the Chargers game or the Patriots game, or the numbers weren't quite there, but you just knew that eventually when the lights were about to go on and you see him getting into some more high profile matchups like the Dolphins, like his second half, really the last 3 quarters against the Dolphins were outstanding. Like he was the best player on the field. And then once the playoffs got started, even though the Steelers aren't that great of a team and they snuck in just by default into the postseason, you saw him make the splash plays, like the 52-yard touchdown run that everyone knows about at this point. That he might be the only person in the NFL at the quarterback position that can do something like that. And then you have the flash plays in terms of the 29-yard touchdown pass to Dalton Kincaid as soon as the Bills take the ball over from the Steelers on the turnover there. And then from there, it's just these little moments. And then on third downs, when he just absolutely breaks a team's heart, that's what he has done his entire career. And he ramps that up in the postseason. So I think we're potentially on the precipice of a Josh Allen, kind of in that same mode as 2021. We talk about it all the time, but there's a key difference here because in 2021, he had a healthy defense heading into the Chiefs game. This time the roles are reversed a little bit, where Mahomes and the Chiefs, they were banged up on defense heading into that game in the divisional round. Now it's the Bills' turn. The Bills have all the injuries they're going through, and they need to depend on Josh Allen more than ever. And we might see a different level from Josh Allen next week.
We'll talk more about the injuries and the defense as we get a little bit further into the show. But I guess my question with Josh is, how much tougher is the opponent that they are getting ready to play? Because when I think of the Steelers, I think of a team that's got a really good defense. I know they do not have TJ Watt. I know they also do not have the bite that they once had. How good is the Chiefs' defense, and how big of a problem is that for Josh Allen and ultimately the Bills? Joe, we'll start with you.
Well, I think the Steelers, they did well as a unit, but they were dealing with some significant injuries. Like they were down to their 4th and 5th linebacker, I think. Their cornerbacks have been a mess. I was talking to our Steelers writer at The Athletic, and he's like, Cameron Hayward hasn't been the same guy this year. Without TJ Watt, is just kind of toothless outside of Alex Highsmith. So, they had done well enough to get to that point in the season, but the Chiefs, different animal. Their defensive line is outstanding. Jones in the middle of that unit, he is constantly a thorn in the Bills' side. I would expect them to attack Osiris Torrance with Jones all game long, because that's, I think, the biggest matchup disparity there. And then in terms of what they have on the back end, you just look at their cornerbacks. L'Jarius Sneed is someone who really played a great game against Tyreek Hill and got really physical with him at the line of scrimmage. And I think that is something they're going to mimic heading into this matchup, where maybe Sneed follows Stephon Diggs around. And then you have Trent McDuffie, who's just an absolute stud for them, who I think the Bills wanted that year, and the Chiefs swooped up and got him right out from underneath their nose, and the Bills wound up with Kyer Elam. So these are all the little micro things in this game where I think the Chiefs have a ton going for them on defense, and they are the reason they are where they are right now. And it's a matter of whether or not Allen can find that different level against a great defense, the same way that Mahomes did against a great Bills defense a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I think Joe's
Howard, what
right.
do you think?
I mean, front to back, they're solid. I don't have to repeat everything Joe said, but I think the linebackers are so much better than what Pittsburgh Field did. And I thought the Bills were successful in part with the middle of the field the other night with their passing game. I don't know that you're going to be able to be that effective against Kansas City. But Jarius Sneed historically has done a pretty good job when he's on Diggs of somewhat negating Stephon Diggs. And so, again, the question might be, who's next up? Is Davis back? Can he have a big game? If not, Shakir, obviously, and Kincaid, I think, are two critical weapons in the passing game against Kansas City. And also, obviously they have familiarity with Josh Allen. They've played him enough. They know all the attributes he brings to the field. And Steve Spagnuolo is a really good defensive coordinator and has the ability to put together some schemes and disguise some things to really confuse quarterbacks. So in Kansas City, they're talking about how they think this might be the best defense they've had since Mahomes became starting quarterback. So I think it's a much bigger challenge than Pittsburgh.
Let me ask you this, and we'll get to big picture a little bit later in the show. Do you feel more confident that the Bills can go on a run and get to the Super Bowl than you did 24 hours ago? Well, actually, I'll say like 26 hours ago before the game started, or less confident because of the injuries and because of the team that they're ultimately playing? Howard, this time we'll start with you.
I'd say less confident. You can't – in the second half yesterday, of the 11 supposed starters on the defense, 5 were backups. Both starting linebackers were out, and the top 3 cornerbacks were out. So honestly, that's problematic. If you're going to go on a run here, you're going to have to beat Patrick Mahomes. Then you're either beating C.J. Stroud, who had an amazing rookie year, or Lamar Jackson, and then whoever the heck comes out of the NFC. So it's not that I don't believe the Bills are talented enough to win the Super Bowl, but in the playoffs against the top level competition, if we're talking, and I don't know that all these guys are going to be out. If Bernard's out, that's a big loss just himself. But if you took out Bernard and Dotson and Douglas and Taron Johnson, who's the best or second best nickel cornerback in the league, and all this stuff, you have to make do with all this. I know the defense went through Daquan Jones and Trey White and Matt Milano, and those were massive injuries. But this is the playoffs, guys, and you're facing really good offenses. A depleted defense would make me very concerned.
I am at the same level as I was before the game, even with all the injuries, because for me, the playoffs really boil down to one simple point. If you have the best player on the field and he is the quarterback of that team, then I think you have a chance to win any game, regardless of who you have on defense. Now, of course, you need some good players here and there, and the Bills do have that. Their defensive line is totally intact. Their safeties are totally intact. And, I'm somewhat expecting, I don't know anything for sure, but I'm somewhat expecting Rasul Douglas to be back on the field. He did say to my colleague at The Athletic, Tim Graham, that he'd be ready for the Chiefs game. So take that for what it's worth. That's a player who's usually optimistic. Tyrell Dodson, Sean McDermott said after the game that he was close. Taron Johnson is in concussion protocol, but we have seen guys get through concussion protocol in 1 week. But regardless of all that, this all boils down to Josh Allen for me. And Allen played as well as I have seen him, back in the 2021. This is not last year's postseason. It is not last year's wild card round where the Bills barely snuck by the Miami Dolphins led by Skylar Thompson. The Bills looked dead right after that round, and then they were absolutely blown out of the water by the Bengals the next week. This is not the same Bills team as last year. I think they are still moving in the right direction. They were able to be potent offensively against a good team defense in the Steelers that have played well despite all their injuries. And they did it without Gabe Davis, and they did it with some pressure getting to Allen. So all of these different things combined, to me, I'm looking at Josh Allen as the key here and as the guy. And if he plays the way that he did against the Steelers and even finds a level up with that, then I think anything is possible for the Bills, and no injury on the defensive side will get me to move away from that, because Allen just has a different sort of gear once the playoffs come around. And I think we're starting to see that.
Okay, so for those of you who are watching at home, what we are going to do, I know the show looks a little bit different this week. That's because we're continuing the conversation on our Facebook and on our website. So we are going to take a quick break on the TV side of things. We're going to answer some questions during the commercial break. So if you're watching on the stream, stick with us. If you're watching on TV, we'll be back just in a couple minutes here. All right, so we are on the stream, everybody. Hello, what's going on? We are going to answer some of your questions. So we've got Jenna in the control room who is going to bring up some of the comments that people have left us on Facebook. Jenna, do me a favor. Give me like a 30-second heads up when we're going back to TV. Hi, everybody on Facebook. Thank you very much for watching. Once again, Matt Bove, Joe Piscaglia, Howard Simon. Let's pull up the question from Zeke, Jenna. The question is, do you think the Bills will do it this time? Guys, I know this is teasing a little bit ahead to what we'll talk about later in the show, but quickly, what do you think? You think they got it? I think we'll specifically keep this to the Chiefs, by the way, not the entire Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think they'll win this game. I mean, Joe just made me feel better. I know, I do. I feel good. Look, I don't think all those guys are going to be out, but I agree completely with what Joe said. As long as Josh Allen and the offense are at or near the top of their game, this team can beat anybody in the league. So despite what's going on defense, this is not a vintage Mahomes Chiefs offense either, by the way. I do think the Bills and home field, I think, will matter for them in this matchup. I think they'll beat Kansas City on Sunday.
Yeah, for me, it boils down to not only the Josh Allen factor, but it also comes down to the weapons that he has in addition, because he really didn't have these things even the last time these two teams played in the playoffs. I mean, they had Gabe Davis, and he had the game of his life in that one. But they didn't have Khalil Shakir, who has turned into an absolute stud for them. Dalton Kincaid, I think, could be the biggest matchup disparity here for the Bills and what they're trying to do this week. And then James Cook. I mean, there's a large difference. Due respect to Devin Singletary, because he's having a nice postseason run for the Texans, and he's helped solidify that position for them. James Cook is a different running back that is so much better suited to what the Bills are trying to do offensively than what Devin Singletary ever did. So all of those pieces. And on top of this, I've said it multiple times on this show throughout the year. This is the best offensive line they have ever had in front of Josh Allen. They have not had a single player miss a start the entire season through the first week of the playoffs. That's unheard of for offensive line play. So,
Joe.
I don't believe in jinxes. So to me, you have all of these pieces on offense. Go outscore the Chiefs. It's that simple. You're at home. You've only lost once this year. It was to the Broncos, and at the last second, go outscore the Chiefs and get yourself to the AFC Championship game. Can they do it? We'll see. But I'm optimistic for their chances.
Your last point is kind of what I come to of this game's at home. When you lost the 13-second game, you were on the road. When you lost the AFC Championship game, you were on the road. Now you're at home. Take advantage of that, and obviously, we'll see what happens. Okay, well, you're just getting ready to come back to TV, so if you were watching on the stream, we hope you continue to watch, and we'll be back on TV in a couple minutes. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us. We just answered a couple questions during the commercial break for everybody who's watching on our stream, on Facebook, on our website, WKBW.com. Make sure to join the conversation. Maybe we'll answer your question at the other commercial break. Guys, I wanted to talk about some of the unsung heroes from yesterday's win against the Steelers, because I think there's a lot of different guys that we can spotlight. But the first person I want to go to is Khalil Shakir. What a moment. Howard, this guy I feel like we could talk about him every single week for making a big play, but none bigger than the one he made yesterday.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, I mean, I Joe knows I'm a big fan of his work, but I read his article and I loved the teammates talking about that play, the catch, avoiding the tackle, the different descriptions they used, and I didn't understand any of them, and how to describe the run after catch. I mean, that's a massive play. I mean, Allen's 52-yard run was incredible, but in terms of in that context of I didn't think they were going to blow the game anyway, but it's a one-score game. If he's tackled, that's going to be about a 3rd and 8 or so at the Pittsburgh 16-yard line. Now, if they don't make that, they're probably bringing out Bass. That's the end of the stadium that was hard to kick into. He had a rough day with field goals. You never know. But they probably would have gotten 3. But the game was sealed at that point. I thought for sure he was going to get tackled. Him getting breaking that and running for a touchdown and then being lifted on the shoulders of his teammates was one of the more memorable moments in a Bills playoff game. It was an amazing play, and good for him because, yeah, guys, he has really stepped up and elevated his game over the last month of games.
My favorite part, a couple of parts about all of that was one, when I was going through the locker room, I made it a point to talk to a lot of the guys who were on the sidelines because, you know, they could see the whole thing evolve. And as soon as I brought up the play, it was like, they basically took a step and like, whoo, and it was just like this moment for them. And they're like, oh my goodness, that play. But the second thing I really enjoyed about it was, not even like 4 days before, Stephon Diggs was at the podium talking about Khalil Shakir and was like, it's not as though he like lacks confidence or anything like that. It's just like he doesn't really know what to do. Like he doesn't know how to celebrate. And Stephon Diggs is like, can I get like a little celebration or something, a first down show or something? And it's just so funny that it came down to that where he got into the end zone. He didn't celebrate. He just kind of ran into it. And then Dawson Knox lifted him up. And then it was everyone else doing the talking for him. And then after the game, when, you know, he was talking about how it was this drill that they do once a week where he's able to do that zero gravity knee to the ground turn up the field. So a reporter insinuated to him like, well, it probably takes a little bit more instincts to do the way that you did it. And he's like, well, I guess. It's just like, it's just this totally unassuming dude. And it's moments like that. It reminds me of the Taron Johnson interception return against Baltimore a few years ago. Same kind of moment for this young player that didn't really get to that point until they had that postseason moment. And I do wonder if this is the catalyst for Shakir to become just an absolute a stud for the Bills from this point forward. Maybe not to the point where he's like a $10-15 million receiver, but someone who's going to be in their 3 receiver sets for the foreseeable future.
All right. So I love everything that we said about Khalil Shakir. We're going to go to another quick break here, answer a couple more questions. And then on the other side of the break, we're going to start talking about the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and all of those guys. All right. We'll be right back. All right. Are we good on the stream? Hello, everybody. Thank you for watching us. So we've got a couple questions here. I like this one from Melanie that we'll answer. It's about why did they release Leonard Fournette? So Leonard Fournette was on their practice squad. For those who are watching, he about 3 hours ago was released from the practice squad. Joe, you raised your hands. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think it boils down to a couple of different elements. One, it was very clear in the Miami game that they lost a lot by not having Latavius Murray in the lineup. And I know people are going to be like, why? He stinks. He short yardage. He doesn't gain yardage, anything like that. He can't make people miss in the open field, all this, but playoff Lenny. But on blitz pickup, I'm telling you, it was a nightmare for the Bills against the Dolphins. And Latavius Murray is so much better than anyone else they have on the roster. So they felt like they needed to have him up. And just by sheer numbers, they had to have AJ Klein up or they called him up because the injury to Dodson. They had to have Andy Isabella up for special teams reason because of the injury to Gabe Davis. So you only get 2. And then on top of that, all the injuries and then the blitz pickup. And then you have more injuries added where they're going to need practice squad spots and probably some frustration from Fournette about not being in the game in the playoffs, which is basically why he signed in the first place. So I think it's just all of those, a culmination of all of those things for the Bills to where both sides probably thought to themselves, okay, it's probably best that we both move on.
Howard, quick question for you because there have been a couple comments about special teams. How concerned are you? Special teams. I know Sam Martin is kind of an unknown, but are you concerned about Tyler Bass?
Not yet. I mean, he's had kind of an up and down season. He did hit a field goal yesterday. I guess I'd have to be concerned. If you're going to be concerned, you're going to tell me special teams will cost them a playoff game. I don't think I'm at that point. I don't think they're going to lose a playoff game because coverage units or, I don't know what's going on with Martin's hamstring. I'm not that concerned that Bass is going to just kill them and that's going to be the reason they lose a playoff game. So no, I would say I'm not yet.
It's funny. Your former colleague, Joe DiBiase, put up a question today on social media. I don't know if you saw it, but it was, would you feel confident if the Bills had a 45-yard kick to win and if they miss, they lose. And I think it's just a math question at that point. I think absolutely. You trust Tyler Bass to make a 45-yard kick.
Yeah.
If he doesn't make a 45-yard kick in a clutch moment, then you know he's probably not your guy, even though he's been paid. I know kickers have mistakes here and there, but I think you would sign up for that in a heartbeat.
It all depends which side of the field he's kicking, I think. If he's kicking away from the tunnel, I would not be as confident. But if he's kicking towards the tunnel, I would be more confident.
Yeah, but I think if he's kicking away from the tunnel, at the same time, what does it become? Instead of a 90% chance he makes it, an 80% chance?
Yeah, I mean, that's enough for me. I mean, it's swirling winds, and if you bring down the percentage that much, then you're like, okay, well, that it's all variables at this point.
All right, we're coming back to TV in a second. Welcome back, everybody. So have you heard the Buffalo Bills are hosting Patrick Mahomes in his first ever playoff game on the road Sunday in Orchard Park? It's cool. This is going to be a fun week. There's a lot to talk about. What have we seen from Patrick Mahomes this year? Why does it look like things are a little bit more different? Is it him? Is it the guys around him? Is it a combination of everything? Joe, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a combination, and I think the Chiefs were trying to figure out who they were on offense, as weird as that is to say out loud, because they have been just so dominant for so long. I mean, they went through basically just this insane rotation at the wide receiver position for far too long in the season, probably for the first 13, 14 games, to where they were continuing to push Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney, Justin Watson, Mecole Hardman, Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Like, all of these different guys were getting a little bit under 50% of snaps, when the best guy that they had, which is rookie Rashee Rice, was also getting under 50% of the time, just so they could get all these other guys time on the field. And so once they really boiled it down to Rashee Rice, Travis Kelce, and going mostly with Valdes-Scantling, and then Richie James is someone who's kind of solidified things for them in the starting lineup there. That's when they've really started to hit their stride a bit here, and they played really well, I thought, against a good Dolphins defense, even though they were banged up. They did get healthier heading into that Chiefs game. And I think for them, the Chiefs finding themselves on offense a little bit is potentially a scary situation for the Bills, but I don't think they're all the way back. There's just something a tiny bit off about Travis Kelce this year. And he's not the same dominant force as he was a couple years ago, the last time the Bills saw him in the playoffs. Is he still a great player? Absolutely. But these routine drops that he's having, getting caught in the open field a bit more, not getting as open as he has in the past. These are all elements to me that matter when all of these precious yards and precious points rack up. So I think the Chiefs offense they're getting going, but I still think there's room for the Bills to outscore them.
Yeah, I think, every time I'm going to throw a little bit throughout the Miami game because it was so cold and crazy. But every time I've seen the Chiefs this season, they have not looked like the old Chiefs. Now, that doesn't mean to tell you shouldn't be worried. I'm always going to be worried about Patrick Mahomes. He's still an extremely talented quarterback. He's got, he'll make the backbreaking scrambles if he has to. I'd be worried about him. I'd still be worried about Kelce. Joe, to your point, Rice is the one guy I would be worried about. I'd also tell you that I'd be worried about Isaiah Pacheco in this game. I think the Bills' run defense was great against Pittsburgh, but every time I watch Pacheco, I'm really impressed with him. So there are some guys on the offensive side of the ball that you still have to be concerned about if you're the Bills in this matchup, and you never rule out Mahomes. But Matt, to your original point, you watch him, and it's a combination of things. Like Joe mentioned Kelce, but there are drops all over the place when you watch Kansas City's passing game, and there are miscommunications where Mahomes is thrown to one spot, guys in another spot. They just, every time I've seen them, they look disjointed. They looked like that funk the Bills went through in the middle of the season leading up to the Dorsey dismissal.
All right, I'm not going to make us make picks, but we're going to talk about big picture and what we think on the other side of the break. Don't go anywhere. You're watching a special edition of Leading the Charge right here. All right, everybody, a couple more comments. Let's see.
Excuse me.
Everybody, we've got one more, guys, Joe and Howard. We've got one more commercial break here, and then we will be done at 7:29, just so you guys are aware. That is when the show ends. Hopefully you can hear me. Are we good on the stream, everybody? Thank you once again for all of those of you who are still tuned in with us.
I got
Seen
home
a
at
couple different
1:30.
comments here. Let's see. Howard, can you punt? That one's from Joe.
I can, but I can't tackle. And I don't punt that far, actually. The hang time would be – Joe would not like my punt-a-palooza. Low hang time, low yardage, and I have an aversion to getting hit.
All right, guys. We have about – how long do we have until the next commercial? Until we come back from the commercial? Can somebody in the control room fill me in on that? No. Howard, can you punt?
Yes.
Nice.
You mean
All
on
right.
the segment? Should we punt the segment? Is that what we're doing? Joe, you can punt, can't you?
It's
Okay.
It's not what I'm best at.
No? All right.
I'm next up for right tackle if they
boy.
need me.
Wow.
Guys, this is a good point from Greg, my brother-in-law, by the way. He said, "Is Jason Kelsey going to be here too?" Because
Probably.
I mean, Travis, right?
Probably.
So you'll
Donna,
get
the mother will be
Travis
here, right? Donna Kelsey.
So you'll
The whole
get
family
Donna
might be.
Kelsey,
Yeah.
Travis Kelsey, Taylor
And Jason.
Swift.
You know
Yeah,
Taylor's going to
Kelsey.
be here.
Taylor's
for
coming?
Sure.
All right. That's really exciting.
Guys, we have about a minute on the other side of the break. We're 30 seconds away. I'm just going to ask you both, do you think they've got enough to get to the Super Bowl?
Okay.
Simple question. We'll talk about that on TV. If you're watching on the stream, you already know the question I'm going to ask.
That's how TV works.
That's how TV works.
You guys don't ad lib and vamp? Wow. It's all planned?
If you're watching on the stream, you already know the question that I'm going to ask to end the show. Are the Buffalo Bills good enough to get to the Super Bowl? Do you believe in them? Howard, 20 seconds, go.
100% yes. Nothing changes my mind from before the season, before the playoffs to today. Yes, absolutely good enough.
Joe?
It hasn't changed from what it was before the Steelers game. To me, if Josh Allen is playing the way that I think he can in the playoffs and the way he did against the Steelers, then I think any they can beat anyone left in the playoffs, whether it be the Texans, the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Niners, the Lions, whoever it may be.
For me, you have all of this laid out right in front of you, right? We were talking about, would this team make the playoffs? Then they get into the playoffs. Then it was, okay, well, you've got this tough matchup to start, and then you've got the Chiefs. But now you know you get them at home. You've got another playoff game. You're finally getting the Chiefs at home. Take care of business in a building where you have just lost once this year, and that's because you had 12 guys on the field. And then if you get to the next game after that, who knows what happens? Thank you, everybody, for watching this special edition. For Howard, for Joe, I'm Matt. Have a good night. All right, guys. Thank you, everybody who's watching on the stream. We've tried something a little different this week, so we appreciate you watching. We'll be back to normal soon, we promise. Howard, Joe, stick around for one quick second. I just know we're on the stream here.
Okay.